Hey there, my fellow designers and creatives. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to the fourth video in this mini series on advanced prototyping with Figma variables. If you haven't watched the previous videos, make sure to watch that because I'm going to show you how to create all of the interactions that's going to lead up to this particular video. Very important if you want to go ahead and understand how this entire prototype is built. Okay, so let me show you what we're going to be creating in this video, and this is going to be pretty much one of the most complex videos ever, so pay attention. So the first thing that we want to do is obviously enter our phone number, and let's say I enter a random phone number. I can enter something random, click on send code, and that gets registered over here. And now I can do a couple of things. The first one is I can tap over here, which is going to fill the entire correct code. I can then tap on verify code, and then the color changes to green, and then we transition to the home screen, right? That is one interaction. The other interaction is, let me enter another phone number all again. We go ahead and we enter the same OTP, but we go ahead and type it instead of clicking over here. So I'm going to say 314405, and then that is the correct OTP. Click on verify code. It's going to change to green, and then we transition to the home screen, right? So let's try again, and this time we can look at the error state. So I'm going to enter again a random phone number, tap on send code. All right, we wait for this to come, and what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to tap on a random 6-digit number. All right, whoops, let me try that all again. Click over here, click here, send code, and then over here I'm going to, let's say, right. Now in this case, the OTP is actually wrong. So I'm going to tap on verify code, and that is going to go ahead and shows the error state, and I can start typing any of the digits again. So I type in some random thing, and you can see that the error message goes away, right? And not just that, if I go ahead and enter verify code, and this time I tap on the suggestion bar, then the suggestion gets filled over here in the input field, and then it goes away, right? So we're consulting a lot of things. Now, another interesting thing here is that in this particular screen, I've already entered some digits. And what if I want to go back? So when I go back, we go ahead and reset everything. Now we've already done this in the previous video, but in this video, what we want to do is we want to make sure that when I enter the phone number again, we go ahead and reset all the information that we had before, right? Whatever was the OTP that was inputted, the number of digits, the actual state of the OTP field, all of that we will have to reset, right? So navigation is also something that we will look at. And with that being said, let's get started. So this is where we stopped off in the last video. I'm going to go ahead and just make a duplicate of all of this because it would be easy for us to go ahead and organize things a little bit better. Now, the first thing that I want to do is, because we made components out of this also is going to have various states. So I want to make a separate component for this as well, right? We can use the same one, but it's just going to make things a lot complicated, and because we have too many variables, so we'll just keep it very simple and straightforward and make a separate set of components just for this, because here we don't have the left indicator. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a copy of this master instance that we have of the pin input field. All right, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change this to OTP input field. So we're going to go ahead and change this to OTP input field, and we don't need any of this. So I'm going to delete all of that. We don't need any of those things. We just need the random num. Everything else looks fine over here. This is going to be a placeholder again. Here we have the text, which is fine. And then here we have the indicator as well, right? Now, let me just make sure that we don't have any unnecessary variables. So this is placeholder. This is also placeholder with the cursor. Over here, we have the text. So here we added a variable called as the phone number. Now we are going to replace this with another one called as the OTP. So I'm going to delete this and create a brand new one. So go to create collection. I'm going to say OTP input. Okay, and create a new string variable, and this is going to be the actual OTP, right? The OTP number, the actual OTP number. Okay, and obviously by default we want it to be nothing. Okay, so then I'm going to take this text layer and then apply that OTP number over here. Okay, perfect. And then we have this, there is no variable attached to this, so this is perfect, right? So we're just basically trying to replicate the same thing that we did over here, but for this with 6 digits, right? We want to maximum limit it to a value of 6, but here it would be depending on the country code. If it was India, it would be 10 digits. If it is Germany, it would be 11 digits, right? But irrespective of the country code, here we will only have 6 digits, right? You can make this 4 digits. A lot of apps have 4-digit OTPs, but that totally doesn't matter. You might have a 10-digit OTP as well. The interaction is going to be the same. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just copy this and paste that over here. Now here, actually, as you can see over here, we are transitioning from this screen to this screen, okay? And then the keyboard comes. So what I actually want to do is for this particular screen, I want to have the inactive state, okay? So I'm gonna come over here and then just paste that, okay? And then change this to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, okay? This is going to be the inactive state, okay? And then over here, I would have the active state, right? Because we're just transitioning over here with this with the keyboard. So by default, it is going to be like this. And then once the transition automatically happens where the keyboard comes up, it would change to the active state, right? So I'm going to copy this, come over here, paste this, and then this would be active, and then we can delete this one, okay? Here again, this would be active, and we can delete this one. Here, we're going to change this to active. Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to assume that we start typing the numbers on this particular screen where we have the suggestion bar. You can do that over here as well, but we're going to do it over here because it's a little easy for us because we can do both the animation, both the interactions over here with the suggestion bar and the actual numbers, right? So I'm not going to put any of the animations over here. I'm going to do all of them over here. It doesn't really matter where you do it. Okay. So the first thing is when I tap on this, we want to pre-fill the phone, not the phone number, now it's going to be the OTP. We want to pre-fill the OTP with 314405. Okay. So let's go ahead and add a interaction. Now there is not going to be any conditional because there's not going to be any if statement, right? If we tap on this, we pre-fill it with the number. That's about it. Okay. Perfect. So let's quickly understand. I'm going to go ahead and just grab a text layer so we can write down the things that we need. Okay, so let's start. So when I click on the suggestion bar, okay, when I click on the suggestion bar, okay, the first thing that I want to do is right now this is in the active state. I want to change it to the filled state, right? So change OTP status to filled state, or sorry, OTP state. May I say OTP input to filled state, right? So we'll go ahead and set this to white and then just select the ones that we need, blue, and then set this to filled, set this to blue. Okay, so right now this is in the active state as you see over here. We want it to be in the filled state where you have a filled phone number. Okay, so that's the first thing that we want to do. And then the second thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and fill the number, right? We want to print 314405. We want to print this exact number, right? Because that's the whole point of using the suggestion box, right? So print 314405. That's about it, right? So to do this, we need two variables. We need one for the input and one for the print. So this one, we have not applied a variable, so let's apply one. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to local variables. And now we can use the phone number input itself, but I'm just going to be using the OTP input and create a new variable because it's easy to organize. So I'm going to come over here, create a new string. And here I'm going to say OTP input state. Now, maybe let's use the same naming convention. So here I said OTP active. So I'm going to do the same thing. So PN active. So I'm going to do the same thing over here where I'm going to say OTP underscore active. And here I'm going to change this to active. Okay. And then select this. And instead of using it manually over here, I'm going to say OTP active. Perfect. Okay, amazing. So now let's do this. Okay, so when I click on this, we want to add a prototype. We want to do a couple of things. First one is change the OTP input to fill. So come over here and choose set variable. We want to select the OTP input, right? So I'm going to select for OTP. And here we have this, which is the OTP active. I want to change it from the active state to the filled state, right? Because the filled state is where we can actually see our OTP number. So I'm going to type in filled and I'm going to click on this to add those quotes and that should be good to go. Okay, so let's test that out. Come over here, press shift spacebar, and then I click on this and you can see it is now in the filled state, but we don't have the number because we have to print this, right? So let's print this. Okay, now click on this, set variable. We're going to add another one. So I'm going to say set variable again. And now we are going to print this, right? So we're going to take the OTP number, okay, the actual OTP number. Let's actually see if the naming is the same. So if I come down here to phone number input, you can see here the phone number is blank. And so over here, the input, or maybe just going to call this OTP, not even call it OTP number. And then we can come over here, or actually let's come back here to prototype, click on this, okay. And we want to set the variable of OTP, whatever it is. Right now, the default value is blank, right? But whatever it is, even if there was 1 digit or 2 digit, whatever it is, just change that to 314405 and just print that, right? Very simple, okay? Change the state to fill and then print it. As simple as that, okay? So let's check it out. Come over here, shift spacebar, click on this, and then it gets printed. Amazing. Perfect. Nothing to worry about at all. Okay. This gets the job done. Next thing is we want to make the input from here. So we have already gone ahead and done that input over here. We've already, done that. So when I click on one, we do a bunch of these things and we want to do the same thing over there as well. But of course it's a lot simpler over there because we don't have too many conditions. Okay. So I'm going to copy this. And I will come over here and paste it. Okay. And let's see what we want to change. Okay. So when I click on 1, increase the number of digits by 1. That is something that we obviously have to do because we have a limit of 6 digits. We want to make sure that we are counting the number of digits. And if you haven't watched the previous video where I show you how to go ahead and do this inputting of the number, make sure to watch it. This pretty much explains everything, right? This is a simpler version. Okay. So I'm going to remove all of this. Okay. I'm just going to keep these two and I'll tell you why. So we increase the number of digits by 1 every time I tap on 1. Okay. And if the number of digits is equal to or less than 6. Okay. Here we don't have country code, so we can remove that. Okay. Set the input field, or here we can say set the OTP input to filled state, right? So in this particular scenario, I have not tapped the suggestion box. I'm typing over here itself, right? So when I type over here, when I tap over here, it should enter the number 1, okay? Only if the number of digits is less than or equal to 6, right? Ideally, it should be less than 6. But here we are saying equal to is because the first thing is that we are increasing the number of digits by 1 here. So what that basically means is that we have 2 options. Okay. And make sure to check out the previous video again in the ordering part. You can check that out in the timestamps. So either we can do this where we go ahead and set this to less than 6. And then we increase the number of digits by 1, or we can increase the number of digits by 1 and then we set less than or equal to 6, right? We have 2 options. Both of them works depending on the order you choose. Okay. In this case, I'm going to follow the same order as the previous video. So I'm going to keep it like this. Okay. Then if the number of digits is 6, okay, then I want you to set the button to active. Very simple, very straightforward. Okay. In fact, we also want to go ahead and in this case, okay, also set the button to active. Okay. Set the button to active. So I'm going to go ahead and then just change this over here, blue, and set this to green. Okay. So let's quickly do a quick recap. So I'm going to click on this. So when I tap on this, it fills over here, but we also want to change the state of the button also to be filled, right? Because we have six digits and the button should be active, right? Pretty simple. So come down here to prototype, click on this. Very simple. I'm going to add a new variable. We're going to select the button. Now you can create a new button just for this, but in this case, I'm just going to be using the old one that we already have. So click on button. Now, whatever is the state of the button, I don't care. It can be true, it can be false, it can be disabled. I don't really care. Whatever the state is, change the state of that button to be true. That's about it. That's it. As simple as that. Okay. So let's play this again. Tap on this and boom, we've entered 6 digits and now we can tap on this button. Perfectly works. Now, one of the things we want to make sure is that we have some conditionals set over here. So I'm going to remove those conditionals because we copied it from another screen. So I'm going to delete all of these conditionals. These conditionals we don't need. Here we need it. So, but then here we don't really need them. So this is fine. Okay. So now let's go ahead and do this. Okay. So here we have a single action, and then here we have an conditional, and then here we have another conditional. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to tap on one. And we already have these variables that we have set from the previous screens because we copied the keyboard. So I'm basically going to go ahead and remove all of them. So I'm going to select this, remove all of this, select this, remove all the interactions. And I think here as well, we have the keyboard down here. I'm just going to go ahead and select all of them. We don't have anything over here, so fine, that's good. Okay, great. So I'm going to tap on one, click on the plus, and when I click on this, what do we do? First, we increase the number of digits by 1. Now, for this number of digits, all right, we have added one over here for the phone number. Now, we can reuse the same thing, or we can go ahead and create a new one to keep it simpler, all right? So we'll go ahead and just make a copy of that. I'm going to come over here and paste it on this particular screen, all right? Move it down. And for this, we had added that variable of number of digits, but we're going to make a new variable just for this OTP one, right? So what that means, I'm going to come down here to variables, and here we have our phone number input. Now here we have number of digits. I'm in the brackets. I'm just going to say PN because it's easy to understand. And then I'll come down here to our OTP input. Can we rearrange this? Unfortunately, we can't for some weird reason. But I guess it doesn't matter. Here I'm going to say number of digits. And here I'm going to say OTP. Okay. And the default value is going to be 0. Okay. And then I'll click on this and then apply here the number of digits. We're going to say OTP. Okay. Perfect. So now we can create this interaction. So come down over here to this button, click on that. Go to prototype, you're going to click over here. We already have that. So number of digits, we already have that over here. So I'm going to set the variable of number of digits, OTP. Okay. Whatever it is, okay, take that, change that from the current value and just add 1 to it. Okay. We're increasing the number of digits. So I'm going to say number of digits OTP plus 1. Just add 1 to the existing value, right? So here we are selecting the element that we want to trigger. And so here we are selecting the variable that we want to affect, and then take that variable and add 1 to it. As simple as that. Okay. So the first one is done. Next, we want to set a conditional. Okay. So create a new one. I'm going to say add a conditional. Now, so here, if the number of digits for the OTP is less than or equal to 6, okay, is equal to 6. First thing is set the OTP input, okay, change the state of that from active to filled, okay. So the first thing I want you to do 2 actions. The first action is setting the variable of the OTP active, set that to filled, okay. So we now change the state where we can now input this number. Okay. And you can click plus over here to do it. So if number of digits is less than or equal to 6, do the first action and do the second action as well. So, and what is the second action? Print 1. As simple as that. So I'm going to go ahead, set variable of the actual OTP. Now the OTP is currently 0, but the OTP can be anything. And whatever the OTP is, we just want you to add another digit 1 to it. So I'm going to say OTP, whatever it is, just say +1 and add a string. Okay, that's it, right? If the OTP is 35, it becomes 351. Okay, amazing. Now, another conditional we want to set here is this. Now, we'll do this a little bit later. Let's just check if this works. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, press Shift Spacebar. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now when I add 7, the number increases, which is correct, but it doesn't let me add more than 6 digits. Okay, but when you hit 6 digits, we want to obviously take this and turn this to be active state, right? So let's add that as well. So I'm going to click on the 1, click on here over here, and we want to add another condition. If the number of digits is 6, when I tap on 1, then set the button to active. Very simple. Okay, so let me repeat that. When I click on 6, at that point in time, if the number of digits is 6, then set the button to be active. Okay, so we're going to add a new conditional. So we're going to say conditional if the number of digits of the OTP is equal to 6. Okay, say equal to 6, then set the state of the button. Okay, whatever is the state of the button, just change that to true. I don't care what it is. It can be false or true. Just change it to true. I don't care. Right? Cool. So let's check it out again. Click on this, press Shift Spacebar, and type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there we go. It's now active, right? Amazing. I can tap how many more times I want. Now let's try this again, right? If we tap on this, it perfectly works. Now here we don't really have to register this as a number because it doesn't matter to us in this situation, right? Here it doesn't matter to us. But here we want it because we can define the number of characters. But here we're automatically saying that there's no character limit or anything. Just print this number. That's it. Don't worry about number of characters. Okay. Now, here's another interesting thing. If I come over here and press Shift Spacebar, now let's say I am typing the number. Let's say I type in 314, or let's say in this case I just type in 111. I can still tap on 314405 and that will automatically fill that because that's how the animation or the interaction is supposed to work, right? So now all we got to do is we can take this and copy that and select all the other digits, okay? And then press Ctrl V to paste. And all we then have to do is come over here, select this and change this manually, right? So change this to 2, right? So I'll go ahead and quickly do that and I'll see you back in a second. So let's go ahead and test this out. So I'm going to go ahead and Shift Spacebar. Let's type in any random number. Okay. Perfect. Just works perfectly fine. Let's try something else. Just a random number also works perfectly fine. Let's try again. I can type some random number. Whoops. Let's try one last time. And this time I'm just going to go ahead and type in 4 digits, tap on this, and then it works perfectly fine, right? We're going to do a final check all the way from the beginning. So let's see to make sure everything is fine. So I tap on phone number. I enter like a random phone number. This is fine. This animation is working fine. Yes, it is working great. Okay. I click on send code. That number gets over here. Transition works fine. And I think for some reason it's not transitioning to the correct screen. So we can just quickly verify that here when I tap on the send button, all right, we navigate to the, we have multiple variations. Okay. So we want to select this one, which is the correct one. Okay. Now it should work. So let's quickly check that out. So there we go. We add a random number, send code works perfectly fine. Yes, and now we enter random number, click on this. Yes, this is perfect, works amazingly well, perfectly fine. Awesome. So now we have to do 2 things. One is if the number is correct, we transition to the screen. Let's look at the user flow, right? If the number is correct, as you can see, we change the state over here. The cursor goes away because we are validating, okay? And it takes like less than a second to validate it. We change the color to green and then we automatically transition to the home screen, right? Just that, automatic. right? And this happens when I tap on send code. However, if the number is wrong, okay, we want to throw this error message, okay, and we want to reset it, okay. It was in the filled state and now we change it to the active state. Okay, so now that we understood how the flow is supposed to work, what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back and try to analyze things a little bit more, because it's going to get really complicated from now on. So pay close attention. It's not going to be as simple as it seems. It's going to be quite complicated. So let me explain. So what I've done here is I've just gone ahead and created all the states that we will need from the first state to the last state. And the reason I'm doing this is because the conditionals can get really complicated if you don't do it correctly. The first time I did it, I made a big mistake and I couldn't figure out why. So I had to go ahead and restart the entire thing. And that's when I realized that this is actually a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be. So let's understand. Now we're again here in this verification screen, and this is the flow that we're looking at. So you start off with this where everything is empty. No digits, no OTP field. You're in the active state of the input field and everything is normal. Okay. Then the next state is where you enter one digit. So this is how it is. And here the state becomes a filled state. And then you enter another digit where you become 2 digits. And then you have another digit that's added over here. In this case, it's 7, right? And then you enter 6 digits. Now this is a different state because the input field, actually the button is active. And this is the wrong OTP, right? This is not the right OTP, okay? And then you have another state here where you've tapped on the button, but then because it's the wrong OTP, it shows the error message. It resets the numbers so you can start entering again. It also changes the state back to active and also resets the OTP as well, right? So before we had written 121212, it resets that to a blank one and it resets it back to the active state, okay? Basically, this is the same state as the first state. It's just that now here we have the error message, okay? And then we have another state, which is basically the actual OTP, which is the correct OTP. And when you tap on that, you go to the success screen. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to understand what are the actions that we want to perform when I tap on this button, okay? Let's understand that. So here, I'm going to make a list of the actions. Now, when I tap on this button, what should happen? Ideally, nothing should happen, okay? So I'm going to come over here and say do nothing. I'm going to make a copy of that, paste that over here, okay? In this particular state, should we do anything when I tap on the button, right? Here in this case again, since this button is inactive, we don't want it to do anything. I'm going to come over here. And here, what do we want it to do? Again, do absolutely nothing. We're going to try over here. Now, here, wherein the button is the active state, obviously, and we want to tap on it because we want to validate whether this OTP is right or wrong. Okay. And now in this case, we basically are going to transition from this particular screen to this particular screen. So if we have to transition from this particular screen to this particular screen, we have to perform some actions. Okay. So the first one is we want to show the error message. Okay. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say show error message. That's the first action. The second is we want to take the number of digits from 6 and we want to set that to 0. So we're going to say set number of digits. So say number of digits to 0. Okay, that's the second thing. The third thing is that we want to reset the state of the button from active to inactive. So set button to inactive. Then we want to change the state of the OTP from filled to active. So we're going to say set OTP state to active. So maybe we can say OTP state from filled to active. And then the last thing that we want to do is we want to take the actual OTP itself and then make that blank, right? So set OTP to blank. Okay, so I'm just going to say this so that it's easy to understand. So when I tap on this button, we want it to do all of these actions. Okay, so now what that means is when I come over here and I place this over here, we actually don't want it to do any of these actions, right? So I'm going to come over here and set the opacity of this to 20 so that we can understand, okay? Come over here and do that over here, and do the same thing over here, and do the same thing over here, okay? So in all of these three cases, we're not doing anything. But then over here, we're actually going to perform all these actions, okay? Now, what about this step? Now, in this step, here again, when the screen looks like this, we don't want it to do any of these things, okay? Now, the thing here is that if we have to get rid of this error message, when we enter one of the digits, this error message goes away, right? And that is easy to do. To get rid of this error message, we have to tap any of these numbers, and that is triggered to these numbers. We are only focusing on what we are going to do when we tap on this button. Now, this button, first of all, should not be tappable at all, right? So even if the user can tap on it, it shouldn't do anything, which means we're going to go ahead and make sure that when I tap on this button, none of these actions happen. So set this to 20. Okay. Now, over here, what do we want it to do? Now, in this case, if this is correct, we want to transition to the success screen, right? We want to transition it to the success state. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add underneath this, because, both of these are connected. We're going to say show success screen. Okay. And I can set this back to 100. Now, why am I actually doing this, right? Why are we following this different approach that we didn't follow in any of the other videos? Let me explain. Because, for example, if we come over here and we set this logic, all right, where we say, if the phone number is wrong, okay, and maybe we can add that, okay. So I'm going to say, if actually not the phone number, the OTP, if the OTP is wrong, okay, then do these actions. Okay. And this makes absolutely sense, right? If the OTP is wrong, do these actions. Okay. Or else we can say, go to the success screen. Go to success screen. Now, this logic seems to make absolute sense, right? So if the OTP is wrong, as you can see over here, you perform all these actions where you come over here. But because we have to apply this conditional to this particular button, when we copy this, and if I paste it over here, for example, right, I'm going to move this on the top. Okay. In this case, the OTP is actually wrong, right? Whether it is 0, whether it is 1, whether it is 2, the OTP is wrong. Which means if the OTP is wrong, it is going to show the error message. It's going to trigger the error message over here, right? But we don't want it to trigger anything over here, which means just having the OTP is not enough to perform all these actions, okay? There needs to be a lot more conditions that have to be fulfilled if we have to do all this. Because if we just take OTP wrong, right? And if I copy this and let's say I put it over here, for example, right? In this case, is the OTP wrong? Yes, the OTP is incorrect. 17 is not the correct OTP, which means when I tap on this button, it is going to trigger all of these actions. Which means just having OTP as wrong is not enough. We need to set a lot more conditions so that when all those conditions are met, it performs all of these actions, right? So how do we understand what are all the conditions? Okay. The answer is pretty simple. We just have to follow a simple approach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this. Bring this back to the state that normally was. Okay. And over here, I'm going to remove or else. Okay. And here I'm going to remove the if statement. Okay. And then I'm going to say all actions. Okay. Amazing. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to understand what are all the variables that we have that will help us understand if all those variable conditions are met, then we do this. So let's understand what are all the variables that we have with us. Okay. So I'm going to make a copy of this and we'll come all the way to the beginning and I want to paste that over here. Okay. And here, I'm going to say variables. So let's understand what are all the variables that we have. The first one is we have the state of the OTP field, right? So we're going to say state of the OTP field, okay? Or say OTP input, which is basically active or filled, okay? We have two states, active or filled, okay? And I'm going to select this and drop the opacity of this down to 20 pixel. I'm going to hit enter. What is the next one? The next one, we have the actual OTP itself, right? So we're going to say the OTP, okay? And here in the bracket, I'm going to say the wrong OTP or the correct OTP, right? We have two options, okay? So this is back to 100. Hit enter. Then you have the number of digits, okay? So we have the number of digits. Now, what do? We can probably give it a rule saying that it is less than 6, okay? Equal to 6, or we can say greater than 6, okay? We have three options over here, okay? And then last, we also have the state of the button, okay? So we're going to say button state, and here we can say OTP input state, okay? Here we can say active and inactive, okay? We have states of the buttons. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this and just paste that over here, okay? Paste it on all the other places, okay? All the places. And now let's look at one thing at a time. Now, ideally, I would start with this, but because in this case, we are not performing any actions at all, I'm going to skip that. We're going to come to a place where we have actions that we're performing, which is this particular place, okay? Now, let's understand. If in this case, which is this particular screen, if we have to perform all of these actions, what are all the conditions that we need to meet, okay? The first condition is that the OTP state should be set to filled. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select this and I'm going to set this to green color. Okay, if we have to show the error message and perform all of these actions, okay, which is basically transitioning from this screen to this screen, the OTP state needs to be filled. That is the first condition. The second condition is the number of digits need to be equal to 6 or greater than 6. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of this and I'm going to set this to green as well. So it cannot be less than 6. It has to be equal to 6 or greater than 6. Okay. Then what about the OTP? The OTP obviously has to be wrong if we have to show the error message, if we have to reset all of this, we have to make sure that the OTP is wrong. So I'm going to select wrong and make that green. Okay. Which means we have to make the OTP state to be filled. The OTP needs to be wrong, the number of digits needs to be equal to or greater than 6, and the button state needs to be active. This is how it needs to be. Now, let's copy the same thing, and or maybe not copy the same thing, we can come over here. Now, what should be the conditions that need to be set if we have to show the success screen, right? Let us understand. If we have to show the success screen, what should be the input state? The input state needs to be filled. Okay, so let's take the input field and let's make that green. Okay. Then what about the OTP? The OTP obviously has to be correct if we have to go to the success screen. So we make sure we select the correct and we turn that. Number of digits has to be equal to 6 or greater than 6. And finally, the button state needs to be active. Okay. Now, one of the questions that you may have is why can't we just do an if-else statement, right? If these conditions are met, show the error message and do all these actions. If they are not met, then show the success. Now, the reason that does not work is because the if and else statements have to be exact opposite of each other. What does that mean? So if I grab this is basically the wrong scenario, which is basically the if, okay? And this would be the else statement, right? So if I come over here and say the if conditional, and this is going to be the else conditional, right? And to make this more clear, I would make a copy of this and I would make a copy of this over here. Okay. And in fact, what I would do is I would copy this and paste that over here. And I would drop the opacity of this to be 20. Okay. As you can see here, we have 6 actions. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we have to perform all of these 5 actions, this should be the condition. If not, which is then do the other one which is missing over here, we are showing this conditional. Okay. Now, if we have to have this if and else statement, the else conditional needs to be the exact opposite of this, which means that active here needs to be filled, needs to be active. Okay. And this we can set that to white and 20%. The OTP needs to be correct. Okay. And this we are going to deselect it. The number of digits needs to be less than 6. Okay. And then this would be 20%. And the button state needs to be active. And then we're going to unhighlight this. Okay. Which means if we have to use the if and else conditional, the opposite of this is that this is going to be filled, this is going to be active. This is going to be wrong, this is going to be correct. This is going to be equal or and greater than 6, this is going to be less than 6. The button state is going to be active, this is going to be inactive. But in reality, if we have to show the success screen, this is the right order that we need. Okay. And what is the right order? It has to be filled, it has to be correct, it has to be greater than or equal to 6, and it has to be active. Which means the conditions for showing the error message is completely different, and the conditions for showing the success state is completely different, and just reversing this is not going to be enough. So if you're assuming that I'm going to use an if and else conditional, it's not going to work. I'm basically going to have 2 sets of conditionals, one to show the error message and one to show the success screen. Right? Mainly because we have certain conditions that are overlapping, right? If I reduce the opacity of this to 1, you can see here that filled and filled is overlapping, equal to greater than 6 is overlapping this, and active is overlapping this. The only thing that's different is wrong and correct, right? That's the only thing that's different. So that means I will create 2 separate conditionals, one to show the error message and one to show the success. Okay. So coming back over here, maybe I'm going to add that over here again, say show success message. Okay, and make this 20%. Okay. So just to summarize, that if I have to show the error message and do all of these actions, all of these conditions have to be met. Okay. Because let me tell you, I'm just going to take this as an example. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come over here. Okay. These are the conditions that we need to meet to show these actions. Okay. And let us understand what is the state over here. Okay. Here, the OTP state is filled. Okay. So I'm going to set this to green. The OTP is wrong. Okay. The OTP is wrong. The number of digits is less than 6. Okay. And the button state is inactive. Okay. So because these 2 conditions are different, when I tap on the button, it will actually do nothing, because if this button has to do something, it has to meet these conditions. And these conditions are very much linked to these conditions. Basically, this is exactly what it is. Right? Which is why I have to set all of these 4 conditions if I have to show the error message. Because if I don't, and if I take only one of these conditions, it will end up showing the error message even if one of the conditions is met. So let me explain that again. Let's say we take the, let's say we consider only OTP state, right? So if it is in the filled state, we show the error message. Here also, it's in the filled state. So which means if we just use OTP input state filled as the condition, it will show the error message, but that's not what we want, right? We wanted to have 4 conditions that should be met in order to show the error message. Here, the OTP is wrong, and here also the OTP is wrong. So if we show the error message in this particular state, In this state also we'll end up showing the error message, but we don't want to show the error message over here because this shouldn't even be tappable. Which means that if we have to trigger this error message, we have to make sure that all of these conditions are met. Only then we should be able to trigger the error message. Or in this case, if all of these 4 conditions are met, we show the success screen. So with that being said, we can now finally go ahead and apply the conditional to this button, considering these 4 set of variables and considering these 4 set of variables, one for each the error message, and the second one is going to be the success state. Okay, so now it's time to actually apply these variables and set up the condition. So we basically have 2 sets of conditions, one for showing the error message and doing all of these actions, and for the other one, it is to show the success screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to click on this button, which is the verify code, and I'm going to add an interaction. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we actually need to get the error message itself, right? We need to get that component because we're going to show and hide it. And if you're going to show and hide it, we're going to be using the Boolean variables, right? So let's go ahead and get that, okay? So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to paste that over here, okay? So this is where we show the error message, okay? Now, the question is, first of all, we need to apply a Boolean variable to this. So I'm going to come over here to our variables, and here I'm going to create a new variable called as the Boolean variable, and this is going to be the error message. Now, what is the default value? The default value of the error message is going to be false. That's how it's going to be before we start the prototype, right? So I'm going to select this, and down here, we should be able to apply the Boolean variable. Now, the question here is that we don't really see an option, but the thing is the option is actually there and it's quite hidden. If you click on the I button, and if you actually not click on it, if you double tap on your keypad, or you can right click, then you're going to see a bunch of options over here. And I'm going to search for the error message, and I'm going to click on that. And then that applies, as you can see, the error message Boolean property, and that gets hidden over here. You can see that it's hidden, okay? And I think that this is also there, so I'm going to delete this, and we're going to have this error message over here, okay? So now that we have applied the variable, we can now trigger it. So let's understand. The first thing that we want to do is we want to set the input state of this to be filled. So I'm going to click on this, come here to our prototype, add an interaction, and we're going to say on click, okay? So on click of what? The button, we want to set an if conditional statement, because only if all these conditions are met, then we want to go ahead and perform these actions. So I'm going to click on this and say conditional. So if what? So if the OTP active, okay, is equal to the filled state, now, which means that I have to enter the word filled. Now, the problem here is that it's not going to allow me to do that over here because I'm setting the if statement. If I'm setting the action, all right, so for example, if I am setting an action, okay, and let's say I say OTP active, here I can say filled and it's going to work. But if I'm setting the if conditional, I can't really type in whatever I want, which means in order for us to go ahead and say if OTP active is equal to filled, we need to get another variable with the value filled. So what that means is basically, I'm going to come back over here, and in our variables, I'm going to create a new one over here, which was OTP active. I'm going to press Shift Enter, and I'm going to say OTP filled, and here I'm going to say filled. Okay. So now I will then be able to apply that in the if conditional statement. So if the OTP active state, which is the default state of this, is in the filled state, right? Because is equal to the filled state. Let me move this over here to the side, right? So if it is the filled state, okay, and right, I'm going to press A and D, and the OTP, right, the actual OTP, okay, is wrong. Now the thing here is that if I press equal to, okay, we only have the correct OTP. We don't have the wrong OTP, right? Because the wrong OTP can be anything, but the correct OTP is only 314405. So how do we set a variable that says the OTP is wrong? Basically what we're going to say is if the OTP is not equal to the correct OTP, which is 314405. So instead of saying the OTP is wrong, we're saying the OTP is not correct. We're just changing the English over there, right? So that's the second condition. I'm going to press the third condition, and the number of digits for OTP is equal to or greater than 6. Okay, so this is the third condition. And the fourth one is if the button state is equal to active. So if the button state is equal to true, okay, then I want you to perform all of these actions. Okay, what are these? The first action is to show the error message. So I'm going to set variable of what? Of the error message. I'm going to take that and set that to true. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm going to set the number of digits to 0. So set variable of what? Of the number of digits OTP to what? To 0. I'm going to reset it to 0 so that I can start the count all over again. Then what? The button state to be inactive. So I'm going to come over here, click on the plus, come here to set variable of what? Set the variable of the button. We're going to set that to inactive. So I'm just going to say false. Okay. Next, the OTP state from the filled state to the active state. Now, here things might get confusing. The thing here is that the default one we are starting off with is the this component. Now this component has the variable active set to it, right? So if I show you, this component has the variable active, right? So we need to consider this is the from value, or this is where we are taking the value from. So what that basically means is if I come over here to prototype and if I add a new variable, so set variable of what? Of this particular component. What is this particular component called? It's called OTP active. Now that state could have changed to the filled state. And in this case, it has changed to the filled state. When we enter the digit, it changes from the active state to the filled state. But when we want to reset everything, we want it to go back to the active state. So here we're going to say, take the OTP active, whatever state it is in. If it is in the filled state, I don't care. If it is in the active state, I don't care. Just set it back to the active state. Okay. And to set it back to the active state, I'm going to type in the word active and I'm going to click over here. Okay. So we're basically changing it from changing the state, which is the new state, right? It becomes the filled state when you start entering digits. And because we want to reset it, we want to take it from the filled state to the active state, right? So this particular variable was active in the beginning. When we started entering digits, it became to the filled state. And now we want to set it back to the active state. Okay. And the last one, we want to set the OTP value to be blank, right? So we're going to come over here, click on the plus. We're going to go to set variable of what? Of the actual OTP and set that. Now this OTP now has a 6-digit incorrect number. So we're going to take that and say, take that incorrect number and then just set it to blank. So we're going to add just like, 4 quotes and that makes it blank. Okay. And that is going to be our incorrect conditional. So let's test this out. Okay. So I'm going to come over here, shift spacebar, and let's type this out, right? So the first thing is if I enter an incorrect number, okay, this works perfectly. Let's say I add multiple digits, so it's 9 digits. When I tap on verify code, it resets everything, but it doesn't show the error message. Now let's understand why it's not showing the error message. First, let's check the conditional. Okay. We're going to check the conditional and the conditional sets the error message to true. Okay. Now the reason it might not be showing is because if we select the error message, okay, it looks like the error message didn't get applied. So I'm going to cancel that. Okay. And let me go back into our variables and check. Okay. So we have the error message. So let me apply that again. I'm going to come over here, double click, and then we're going to say error message, and then we're going to apply the error message. So now let's give it another shot. Okay. We enter a random number, which is the incorrect OTP. We click on verify code, and then now we see this error message. Now, how do we get rid of this error message? That happens when we tap on any one of these digits, which we will do in a second. But what we want to ensure is that when I tap on this button, nothing should happen, okay? So when I tap on this button, you can see nothing happens. When I tap on one and I tap on this, nothing happens. When I tap on multiple digits, you see nothing happens. When I tap on any of these, now we have 6 digits, which is more than 6 actually, and then tap on verify code, we show this, right? So this behavior is correct. Now, what do we do if we want to get rid of this error message? Now, the behavior that I'm defining is that we will get rid of this error message when I tap on any one of these digits, because when I start typing the digits, I don't want to see the error message anymore. So which means when I tap on any of these numbers, we need to get rid of this error message. So as I can see over here, when I start typing, the error message doesn't really go away, okay? So we need to get rid of this error message. And how do we do it? It should be very simple. Because if we come over here and look at this, and I go to prototype, and we click over here, we have these conditionals that we set. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set a brand new conditional, or actually not a conditional, it's just going to be a set variable, where I'm going to say, hey, take the error message, okay, and just set that to false. Just set it to false. If it is true, set it to false. If it is false, set it to false. I don't care, right? So now, when I come over here, and I press Shift Spacebar, and I enter a random number, okay, and I say verify code, it shows the error message. And now when I tap on 1, the error message goes away because we are setting it from true to false. So I'm going to tap on 1, the error message goes away, and then everything else works perfectly fine as we would expect it to, right? And now all we got to do is we're going to go ahead and just copy that and paste that on all the other numbers. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to see you back in a second. Okay, so now I've gone ahead and applied that error message condition to all of this. So I'm going to click on this, press Shift Spacebar, and now I can type in any number. I'm going to say verify code. Now in order to get rid of this, I just have to start typing. So let's say I tap on 8, and then that goes away and everything, comes back to normal, right? So I can do this multiple times and it's just going to completely work as many times as I want. And it's just going to perfectly work the way I want it to, right? Amazing. Now we're going to set the true variable, which basically means that when the number is actually correct, we want to transition to the success screen. So if the OTP is correct, we want it to look like this, and then we want to transition to the home screen. Now the question is, because on this screen, this is where we're actually going to be entering the OTP, right? If we should actually transition to a brand new screen, or do we change the state of the OTP itself on this screen, right? Which direction should we take? Now, let's understand this a little bit more, right? Because if we actually, maybe I'm going to type this down because it's a little bit easier to understand, right? There are 2 things that we need to do, okay? If I come down over here and just set this to white. The first thing is we need to change the state of this, okay? So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, set state to completed, okay? Or maybe we can create a brand new state called as the success state, right? And the success state has this green color as well. So we set the state to success, okay? And then we also want to go ahead and we want to transition to the home screen, okay? Right? So we wanted to do 2 things. When I tap on verify code, if the code is correct, we want to set the state to success, which we can easily do with set variable. And then we can also transition to the home screen. But the problem here is that we can't actually set a delay between both of these actions, because when I tap on this, I want to see this change, all right? And then after a second later, I want to transition to the home screen, right? I don't want these 2 actions to happen together at the same time. I don't want it to change the state and go to the home screen at the same time. I want them to be one after the other, which means I want to have a slight delay of 1 second before I go to the home screen, right? So I land on the success state, and then I want a delay of 1 second. So because we need that delay of 1 second, we have to use an additional screen, right? If we don't have to have this success state and we want to directly take the user to the home screen, we can just do that automatically. But because there's going to be a delay of 1 second from when I see the success screen and when I transition to the home screen, we have to use two different screens. Okay. So what does that mean? I'm going to come over here and I'm going to move these things down. Okay. And I'm going to come over here and make a copy of this. And here I'm going to say OTP active. I'm going to say completed. Okay. Now, obviously here, because we're changing the screen itself, we can change the state also over here, right? We can directly change the state over here. But we don't have a state. We only have 4 states. So I'm going to create a brand new state. Okay. So I'm going to come over here and then just duplicate this. And here I'm going to give this a green color. Maybe you can go ahead and copy that color. I'm going to copy this color and then I'm going to come over here. We're going to go ahead actually over here. Yeah. And then I'm going to paste the color over here. Okay. So now let's go ahead and apply this conditional to the button, right? So I'm going to move this actually, maybe get only these two, right? So if I were to recap, we went ahead and applied only the conditional for the wrong OTP, but what about the correct OTP, right? So I'm going to click on the plus, click on conditional, okay? And so if the OTP state is equal to filled, okay? And the OTP is the correct OTP, okay? Okay. For some reason, it sets the OR conditional. So I'm just going to say correct OTP. And the number of digits is equal to or greater than 6. And the button state is equal to active. If these 4 conditions are met, okay. Is equal to active. Or maybe we're supposed to say true. Sorry, my bad. Then we show to the success screen. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to click on navigate to, and I'm going to choose this success screen, basically the completed screen, right? Or maybe we're going to call this the success screen if that's better. Okay. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to come over here. Now I actually have a lot of other screens on this page, so don't worry about it. Navigate to the success screen, right? So we're going to go and choose the OTP active success screen. Okay. And we want it to be a dissolve. Now we can make it to be instant, but I think we can keep it dissolve, or maybe we give it like 50 milliseconds dissolve, right? Not really a big issue, but that's that. And yeah, let's see if this works. Okay. And of course, on this particular screen, we have to change it from active to success. We didn't really apply the number. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to choose, call this success. Okay. So let's test this out. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click on this number. I'll say verify code, and you can see it does absolutely nothing. Now, let's see why it's not. Let's understand. Is the OTP state filled? Yes, it is filled. Is the OTP number correct? Yes. But here we set a condition saying that the number of digits is equal to or greater than 6. Okay. But in this case, the number is actually 0, right? Because we didn't enter the numbers over here. We entered it from here, and here it's actually 0 because we didn't change this when we tapped on this, right? We didn't set a condition. When we tapped on this, the only condition that we set is we fill this, right? So what I can do is in this case, because this has no factor, okay, the number of digits, it can be 0 or it can be 1 or it can be 100. I'm going to come and remove that from this, right? So I'm going to come over here to the conditional. And here I'm going to remove the number of digits. I'm going to just delete that and delete all of this and say and, right? So now we have only 3 conditionals. So I can even just remove this, right? So we have the OTP filled, which is the first conditional. We have the OTP correct, which is the second conditional. And then we have the OTP, the button active, which is button true, right? So now it should work. Let's check it out. Okay. So come over here, click on this, set verify code, and then you can see it works. But now the problem is that it's going to show phone number. We don't want it to show the phone number. We actually want you to show the actual OTP, right? So what that means is we have to come over here and we have to apply that variable, right? The actual OTP variable, we have to apply that over here. Now, there are two options. We can either apply that over here or we can apply that to the master component itself. So I'd rather do it to the master component. I'm going to click on this. And here in the master component, I'm just going to search for OTP and then I'm going to enter OTP, right? And now the OTP value is actually blank. When you start off, the default value is blank, so it's going to be blank. Okay, so now we can test this once again. I'm going to come over here, click here, and then say verify code. And then you can see now that it changed to the state. It basically transitioned to the screen with green color. Okay, we can also enter it and see if it works. So I'm going to enter 314405, tap on verify code, and it works perfectly like a charm. Now, the final thing here is that we want to transition to the home screen. So when we land on this particular screen, I can add a simple transition to this screen. We're going to do a simple after delay, nothing too complicated. We're going to set it to 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 millisecond. And we can do a simple dissolve of probably 100 milliseconds, right? Or maybe let's do 200 milliseconds, right? So let's test this out. So I'm going to click on this, click on verify code. It does that and then it transitions to the home screen, right? Maybe we can reduce the duration. So instead of 1000, we can probably say 500 milliseconds. Then let's see if that works. Let's try again. Come over here, 314405, verify code, validated and enters the home screen, right? Amazing. Let's check if we enter the wrong number. So we enter the wrong number. We say verify code, perfect. It says code is incorrect, please try again. I'm going to try again. The error message goes away. We try again. The error message goes away. We try again. We tap on this. We enter the correct code. Okay. Now here, right, when we entered the correct code, we want to remove the error message here as well. So we want to do that as well. So I'm going to come over here to this. And when I click on this, we already set 3 actions. I'm going to set another action, which is come over here, set variable, maybe collapse this, okay, of what? Of the error message, you set that to false, okay, perfect. So now when we come over here, I'm going to type in a wrong message, a wrong input number or the wrong OTP, click on verify code. And now when I click on this, it does the same actions, but it also removes or hides the error message, okay. And then when I tap on verify code, it validates and then we go to the home screen, right? So that is all about how we go ahead and set this super complex interaction. It looks really simple, looks like there's nothing there at all, but as you can see, there is a lot of things that goes into making this interaction work. And in the next video, we're going to go ahead and finally wrap up this entire interaction by making this a counter. We're going to count it down. So when it hits 0 seconds, we show you a text link that says resend code. You click on it and then it resets all over again, right? So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comment sections down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing, awesome content. Let's see you guys in my next video. So then take care and bye-bye.